A new survey by Rasmussen reports found that 41% of Americans are concerned a civil war could erupt sometime over the next 5 years, including 16% who say civil war is very likely in that same time frame. And so when you talk about these people who don't want to pay, I mean, half the country thinks there's going to be a civil war. And that, again, goes to this country having really lost its bearings. So, yeah, I sympathize with all of those people. I don't think it's probably a good idea when you have 80,000+ new IRS agents looking for people not paying their tax bill, but I understand it very well, John.
In a recent discussion, Andy Schectman highlighted concerning data suggesting civil unrest looms over the US economy. Citing a Rasmussen report survey, he notes that 41% of Americans fear a civil war within the next 5 years, with 16% considering it very likely. Schectman warns of a dire financial trajectory, pointing to unsustainable government spending and burgeoning debt. The conversation underscores growing unease about economic stability, urging viewers to stay informed and prepared.
I understand why people would feel this way. We have an administration that is creating $1 trillion worth of debt every 100 days. I mean, it took 200 years to do that the first time. And when we say the word trillion, I've been saying this for years, for people who don't quite understand how big that number is, we have to put it in context. 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. Putting this amount of debt in context is very important. And you have our politicians who really, I don't even know what I want to call them other than idiot. I mean, that's the only thing that comes to my head. And I mean, you can't make this stuff up because let me read to you something here. This is, and I think this would be in the category of everything that is wrong with our country. This is coming from this idiot, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who just warned in an interview he did that was released just the other day, Sunday, by CBS. He says the U.S. may have to deploy troops to the Ukraine if Kiev suffers a complete collapse against Russia. He said that if they cannot win, if Kiev cannot win the war against Russia using billions of dollars worth of U.S. military aid, Washington would potentially have to intervene directly in the conflict. Now, here's where you can't make this up. He says, we can't let Ukraine fail because if it does, then there's a significant likelihood that America will have to get into the conflict, not simply with our money, but with our, listen to how he says it, our service women and our servicemen. I mean, the wokeness, even of his statement, is obnoxious and disgusting and detached from reality. But here's the part that really bothers me, too. He says, you know, he claims that the U.S. efforts to support Ukraine, including pushing a new $61 billion assistance package through Congress, has been stymied by what he called a pro-Putin faction within the Republican Party. And here's the rub to your point. He signaled out Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who called for the funds to be used for domestic needs rather than sent to the Ukraine. So God forbid someone in Congress has the nerve and audacity to say, hey, we could use that $60 billion here, by the way, in our crumbling infrastructure, in our decaying and lawlessness within the cities, and how about our border problem? And so instead, we've sent upwards ends of $200 billion to the Ukraine with no congressional oversight. And I understand why people don't want to pay their taxes. I understand that. It becomes something where we feel we are not represented by the people in Congress. And here you have one congresswoman who has the courage to stand up and say this is wrong, and she's called a xenophobe and she's attacked. And this is the problem where, you know, if you have dissension at all in ideology, you're a bad person. And if you want to allow open borders and lawlessness and all of this stuff that's happened to this country and think it's okay in the name of being a good person, it's crazy. You know, I think it's important to note that we, you know, when you talk about what this country stood for, yeah, everyone's always come in here from an immigration standpoint, but they've assimilated. They've worked hard. They've struggled to find their way in a new place, starting by learning the languages and the cultures and working hard to contribute. All of these people who have come in, 65% of all the government or public sponsored subsidy of some form are people that are in here illegally. 60 some percent compared to only 30 some percent of American households who are receiving some form of taxpayer subsidies. So I think there are a lot of people out there who just feel that they're not, and their views are not being represented by a government who continues to bankrupt future generations by giving money away to endeavors that we should have nothing to do with. And yeah, I mean, it only makes the problem worse, of course, with tax revenue. And then you look at the Congressional Budget Office, which is the last nonpartisan group in Washington, who says by 2031, 100% of the tax revenue as it is now would go just to pay the interest on the debt and the mandatory entitlement programs like Medicare B, which is 90 plus trillion underfunded. Medicare Part D, the prescriptions, 22 trillion underfunded. Social Security, 77 trillion underfunded. We're so far down the broke hole, it's not even funny. And yet we think it's okay to continue to print money or borrow it into existence and give it to the Ukraine for a war that we should have never really even been involved with, and at the detriment of our own country, and embarrassing and chastising and calling names and calling out a member of Congress who has the nerve to say, no, it should be spent here on our country for our problems. And that just goes to show how far down the rabbit hole we really are. So to your point, yeah, and ask yourself, how can this country remain a dominant superpower when 100% of discretional spending, which would include military spending, will have to be borrowed by 2031, which doesn't even take into account their numbers of the Congressional Budget Office, the 12 million people that are in here illegally, which means who's going to pay for their schooling and their housing and their food and their medicine, all of this stuff that, well, I don't think we've really figured this out yet. So yeah, I think this is a problem that will only continue. And one last point to a question that you probably didn't bargain for such a long answer. There was just let me see if I can find it here. There was just a poll. Here it is. A new survey by Rasmussen reports found that 41% of Americans are concerned a civil war could erupt sometime over the next 5 years, including 16% who say civil war is very likely in that same time frame. And so when you talk about these people who don't want to pay, I mean, half the country thinks there's going to be a civil war. And that, again, goes to this country having really lost its bearings. So, yeah, I sympathize with all of those people. I don't think it's probably a good idea when you have 80,000+ new IRS agents looking for people not paying their tax bill, but I understand it very well, John.
In the continuation of the discussion, Andy Schectman delves into the potential shifts in global currency dynamics, highlighting Iraq's steps toward independence from Western influence. He notes Iraq's application to join BRICS and its efforts to assert control over its oil revenues. Schectman suggests a possible re-evaluation of the Iraqi dinar, drawing parallels to the Kuwaiti dollar's past revaluation. Emphasizing the evolving landscape of international finance, he underscores the importance of staying vigilant amid changing economic paradigms.
Zimbabwe has had failed attempts, many of them. Certainly this is a step in the right direction. And it's interesting when you talk about the platform that they say they're going to use is exactly what the Russian finance minister said will be used in the new BRICS currency they're working on. They said it's a basket of other currencies and a basket of commodities. Well, if they find a way to legitimize and have whatever it is backing the new currency inspire confidence, sure. But as it pertains to Iraq, I think there's a high probability that things will change there, specifically in the respect that they have formally applied to BRICS. They are kicking Western coalition forces out of the country. They want to stand on their own 2 feet. I think they feel betrayed by the West, who invaded them 20 years ago. We're still occupying their country and sanctioning 14 of their banks. And in 2023, they made over $90 billion in oil revenue that the U.S. controls. Why are they not allowed to control if we democratize them, if we liberated them? Why 20 years later, are they still not able to control their own natural resource proceeds? And they asked us for $1 billion. We said that's not a good time right now. So they have taken the steps of making trading in dollars illegal. If you own a business, you indeed will go to jail. That's the law. And your business will be taken by the state. And they as of January 1st, 6 months ago, got rid of all dollar bills in the country. There are no green dollars in any of the banks. So could we see some sort of a revaluation with the dinar? I really do believe we will. To what degree, I don't know. How does it play out? I don't know. But yeah, there are these countries that are certainly moving in a direction to find fairness. Look, for people who think this is impossible, and I was one of those people who was a big naysayer in the revaluation of these currencies, you don't have to go any further than look at what happened with the Kuwaiti dollar. And it's the exact same thing that people are talking about with the Iraqi dollar. And to me, of all, whether it be the Zimbabwe currency or the Vietnamese dong or the Iraqi dinar, to me, the dinar has the greatest potential of revaluing to something. And I don't know what, but yeah, you can certainly see that they are ready to kind of break free of the Western shackles and stand on their own 2 feet. How that plays out, what that means for their currency and their markets and their economy remains to be seen. But I wouldn't count it out for sure.
In today's discussion, we delved into crucial insights on the state of global economics and geopolitical tensions. From the staggering pace of US debt accumulation to the potential ramifications of military involvement abroad, the conversation shed light on pressing concerns. Additionally, we explored the evolving dynamics of currencies like the Iraqi dinar and Zimbabwean dollar, hinting at seismic shifts in the financial landscape. As always, we appreciate your engagement and encourage you to subscribe for more thought-provoking analyses. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments section below.